Hey, Read Through the Word. Today is February 5th, and today's lesson is Just Stay Calm. We are at a pivotal point in the Old Testament, in our story, in the entire Bible. And this is, I hope you're enjoying reading the book of Exodus as we're in the narrative part of the book of Exodus. Excuse me. So we're going to get to the point where we're going to get probably in the next couple of days, actually, where we're going to go into some things, and you're like, what in the world? We just like switched gears, and I don't understand what's going on. But hold on, we're going to go through it together. So today's verse that I'm going with is Exodus 14. We're going to use verses 13 and 14. It says this: But Moses told the people, don't be afraid. Just stand still and watch the Lord rescue you today. The Egyptians you see today will never be seen again. The Lord himself will fight for you. Just stay calm. I love the NLT translation of that verse. I looked at a few different translations when I was trying to get. I always knew the verse is you need only be still. I like stay calm. I think stay calm gives us a better, a closer rendering to the original language and the meaning of the verse. I think King James and New King James both say hold your peace. Let's see, just be still is NIV. I like just stay calm. I think just stay calm is the real true meaning of this. And so that's what we're going to talk about today as we look at this verse. So Exodus 14 is the most, one of the most important stories in the Bible. It is. I told you it's a pivotal point. Here we are. Exodus 14 is where God gets his people out of Egypt through the miracle of the parting of the Red Sea. It's also where Exodus 14 is where God judges the Egyptians by swallowing them up in the Red Sea. Exodus 14 displays the power and the grace of God. Exodus 14 and everything that occurs right here will be referenced more and more throughout the Old Testament and the New Testament, probably than any other Old Testament event. The parting of the Red Sea and that Israel walks through the Red Sea on dry ground. It's such an important thing that God will repeat this miracle for the next generation that will go into the promised land in the book of Joshua by the parting of the Jordan River as they go into Jericho. So this is a pivotal thing here. It is one of the things that will always be brought back to memory for the people. God's a God of remembrance and of meaning, and this is the whole meaning here. So we're seeing this. There's so many different things we could talk about with this. We could talk about how this verse shows us right here that the Hebrew slaves did not win their own liberation. We watched what has happened with the plagues. We watched what happened with Passover, and everything. Finally, till it got to the point where Pharaoh says, "Get out and take our stuff with you." We're to that point, and we're at the point where there is so much going on here that we could go many different directions with the text that we have to read today. But it really is a discussion. I know Wendy talked about it the other day about as we go through Exodus and we look at the children of Israel who have, went down to Egypt as a family of 70 are coming back out a whole lot bigger than 70. And I talked about this with my middle school students, that they weren't just set free to run crazy. They were set free for a purpose. And we'll talk more into that about this, but here is the gateway into their purpose, really. God sets them free for a purpose so that they may worship him and be his people. And as he sets them free, they come to this crossroad. I mean, not really a crossroads. They come to a dead end where it's Egyptians at the back of me and water to the front. What in the world? And they all go crazy and go, Moses, what have you done? We would have been better if you just left us in bondage and slavery back there, because we're just going to die. Weren't there enough graves in Egypt? That's what the text says, Exodus 14:11. And that's when Moses reminds them to watch what's about to happen. And so here is one of those things that we look at when we read something. How do we take a verse from this context and apply it? Okay, so I wanted to show us a couple of things in the verse and see what are our big takeaways out of that. Because, if we're going to take this literally, I don't have Egyptians running at my back, and I don't have a Red Sea in front of me. So what are the truths that are taught right here that we can apply today? And there's so much about Jesus here. There's so much about our walk as Christians that is pictured here. And you will continually hear me say over and over, and I tell my students in my classroom, at school, all the time, you will continually see physical things happen in the Old Testament that are lessons of spiritual truth for the new. And this is huge right here, what we're looking at. So, I had to pick somewhere to land, or we're going to be here for hours discussing that. And, some of y'all were like, yay! And I would love to do that, but my Google Drive could never contain it to upload it for you. So, it would take me hours. It takes me an hour to upload the lesson anyway. So, I can't imagine what that would be like. But maybe one day we'll do it. Or, we get to conference. And so, so how do you take a verse from this context and apply it? What do we see about truth here? Now, one of the things I want you to see here is just in verse 14, once again, we have the Lord, capital L, capital O, capital R, capital D, himself will fight for you. Just stay calm. Okay, you're seeing right here, this Lord is exactly who God has revealed himself to be to Moses in Exodus 3:14. I am Yahweh, the God who was, who is to come, the self-existent, eternal God. That is who he is. He never changes. So, this God right here, that is parting the Red Sea, that will lead his people apart, that will save them from the Egyptians, is the same God that we worship today. He never changes. So what does it mean that God fights for us? Well, it can be, there's so many Old Testament things that we're going to see come to light as we go through. God fights for us, and God fights through us as well. We see that a lot in the book of Judges. We're going to see it in the book of Numbers. We're going to all throughout. So we will look at that as we continue to read. But I want us to think about that God does the fighting. And I think when we see that verse that says, just stay still, it's like we're little robots or statues. Sorry, statues. Robots move, statues just stand still. That's not what that means. Because then that's what creates discontented Christians who just think, I'm just going to sit back and watch. And, but here's the thing about God. God always moves. He is not, his movement and his work is not determined on us, but we're invited into it. So when it says that be still, that's why I really like stay calm. Because it doesn't mean become a statue and do nothing. Anytime God works in the Bible, there has to be a response from his people. Not that that's determining things, but that is part of inviting us into kingdom work. So what does it mean to just stay calm? A lot like what it really sounds like. To just stay calm. To realize, I explained it to my daughter this way the other day. I said, here's the thing. She was upset about something, and I just said, here's the thing we know right now. You know, she's 11. And I said, you know what? God is not surprised. These people are surprised that they're walking into a Red Sea and Egyptians by. God's not surprised by it. God knew it was there. God led them to this. Same thing with us. God's not surprised by anything. Things that shock us, surprise us, he knew. He knew long before, because he's the same God. He's self-existent. He's eternal. He sees all things. He knows all things. He's not surprised by anything. He's not surprised by it. And that's why I told my daughter. I said, God's not surprised by anything. He knows. He holds us in his hand. He carries us through. So sometimes we're involved in the fight, and sometimes he fights for us. So what does it look like? How do we respond in that moment? Because you know what? Those Israelites had to actually move their feet and walk on that land. They had to walk out, or those Egyptians were going to get them. God could have magically, I don't like the word magically, but poof, on the other side there. He didn't do it that way. That's not the way he works here. It's not the way he works now. In this situation, it required response on behalf of his people, just like now. So what he's asking is not for us to be statues. We're active in this. First thing, we are actively believing that he is who he says he is. That's why he says, the Lord, Yahweh, I am. He is here. He is working. Watch. Same thing today. So we actively believe that he is who he says he is. That's why I keep telling you the names of God. Second thing, we actively surrender to his will. I mean, do you see anybody jump in and swim? You running everywhere? No. They surrendered to the will of God and his plan. Part the water. And then what did they? They surrendered to that. And then they actively responded to God's guidance. They walked. They walked right through. They walked right through on dry land. You know, the 10 Commandments with Charlton Heston, they get it wrong. They get stuck in the mud. There was no mud. It says dry ground. They marched through on dry ground. But there was a response there. So just stay calm and respond. Actively respond. We're going to actively surrender. I think it's first actively believe. Actively believe, actively surrender, and actively respond. But in it all, we're going to just stay calm and watch God work. So we'll see you next time on Read Through the Word.